Hello, White Sox fans, and welcome into the first off-season edition of the Sox On Tap podcast. I am Tony Marchese alongside NWI Steve, who's in a festive anniversary mood tonight. We're going to talk a little White Sox baseball, some current stuff, probably take a couple two-tree trips down memory lane. Steven, don't you think?
Hey, yo, Anthony. Yeah, I think tonight, given it's a festive occasion, it's an anniversary of sorts, we need to celebrate a little bit, take a couple two-tree trips down memory lane, like you said. Let's have a little fun, baby.
There we go.
Hey, yo, Sally. What's up, baby?
Yeah, our guy Sale's in the house. Steven is already ripping his first shot. It's a big day in White Sox history, Steven. It's a pretty big day.
It's the holiest day on the calendar, Anthony.
Yeah, it's one of the only ones that we get to celebrate because we were alive for it when it happened, and we'll talk all about the 2005 White Sox in just a little bit. But Steven, before we get to that, let's get the housekeeping out of the way. You probably haven't heard our voices on these airwaves in quite a while, but we're hashtag back, as Steven likes to say. We needed a little bit of a mental break from White Sox baseball. At least I did. I think Steven probably did as well. We appreciate everybody jumping back in and listening, and we apologize for the hiatus. However, it was a long, grueling season, so I wanted to issue a little bit of an apology. We're back. We'll be doing these shows as regularly as we can. And you can also still listen to myself and Jonathan over on the Four Feathers podcast covering the Blackhawks. Steven might make a guest appearance on there a couple, 2-3 times this season because he's a big hockey guy. He loves himself some Connor Bedard. So you can still hear us talking regularly.
I'm obviously a big Connor Bedard guy, but you can't be sliding my guy, Kevin Korchinski. I'm not going to stay for that.
Yes, I know. I left it out there because I needed you to introduce to the people who your guy is over there on the ice at the Madhouse on Madison. But we're back. That's the main point here is that we're back. We're doing our thing. And Steven, where do we want to start today? Do we want to roll into some current White Sox topics, or do we want to start with the anniversary, the 18th anniversary of the Chicago White Sox defeating the Houston Astros in the World Series back in 2005?
I think for shits and giggles sake, maybe we'll just get the current stuff out of the way now, and then that'll give us more time to go down memory lane and reminisce about better days, fun days, back when young NWI Steve was just a fucking menace on the streets here of the region and the south suburbs and
running all up and down Northwest Indiana, huh?
I mean, there may or may not have been a couple of occasions, especially the night after they won the pennant. I may or may not have run down Ridge Road in Lansing outside of Kilroy's Bar and Pub without my shirt on in the pouring rain. It might have happened. Hashtag unconfirmed.
Big is true.
21-year-old Steve in October of 2005, he was on a different level. I don't know if people can really comprehend what was going on at that point. It was a sight, let me tell you.
Hey, well, there's plenty of time to share stories here tonight, Steven, of all the different activities that happened on that night in 2005. But Sale doesn't want us to talk about the 2023 season. I don't really think anybody wants to talk about the 2023 season, but we're going to dig up some old wounds here and pick some scabs and talk about some of the things that have transpired since we've all been together. And I want to start here, Steve. There's been quite a few different rumors about things that, we've hinted at, maybe foreshadowed at throughout the 2023 season. And let's just stare the elephant in the room named Salvador Perez down and talk about potential White Sox moves that are going to come this offseason. The one rumor that we've heard so far through the lovely media is the White Sox are going to target Salvador Perez and Whit Merrifield this offseason. One's a free agent, one we need to trade for. But Steven, the floor is yours, my friend, to deal with this first topic of discussion.
Anthony, you're trying to make me drink, aren't you?
Well, yes, that's
That's what we're doing here. Okay.
the intent.
As if we didn't drink enough this past Saturday. When the boys got together to watch the little Connor Bedard, Kevin Korchinski action, but that's not why you called. The fact of the matter is this: I think we all expect this Salvador Perez nonsense to happen. It's going to be very irritating when it does. The fact that they're going to actually give up capital to acquire him, to acquire a guy that frankly isn't good anymore. Everyone wants to talk about the deficiencies of Yasmani Grandal behind the plate over the last couple of years. If you haven't been paying attention, Salvador Perez, he fucking blows back there now. This is not 2013, 2014 Salvador Perez. He's fucking terrible. And the White Sox have enough guys with sub 300 on base percentages. They don't need to go importing one for $20+ million a year to help fill out their roster in 2024. So this whole thing is very irritating. Like I said, I fully expect it to happen. Doesn't mean I'm going to be happy about it. All that means is that it's just going to make 2024 Steve probably drink even more. And the Whit Merrifield thing, he's also not good anymore. So apparently they're trying this new market inefficiency where you acquire a bunch of players that, formerly were good. Well, I don't know if it's a new market inefficiency.
I don't know if this is not new.
It's been a White Sox thing for a while now. But it's a bold strategy, Cotton. Regardless, we'll see if it pays off.
I'm just going to ask you this one straight up, though. Do you not feel that Whit Merrifield is a potential upgrade over Elvis Andrus or Lenine Sosa or any of the other internal options that the White Sox have? I haven't looked at what the second base market is this year. But if there was a hot name on that market that I'm missing here, Steven, let me know.
I mean, that's like saying a guy that has 5 fingers on his hand is an upgrade over a guy that has 4 fingers on his hand. I mean, it's just, it's an upgrade by default. So is that really an upgrade? I mean, I don't know.
I mean, upgrade to upgrade to something. I mean, I don't know. I'm not really intrigued too much by either of these names as I am sort of blah on both of them. I don't want to go into this season theoretically with Corey Lee and hoping for Edgar Cuero and Carlos Perez to get the job done. That doesn't really move the needle for me.
See, what I was anticipating them doing was the guy that I have kind of circled on my radar, so to speak, from the catcher position is Victor Caratini. Okay. This team has a history in recent memory of acquiring former Cube catchers that are, either towards the back end or on the downside of their career. I mean, you go back, you look Giovanni Soto. You had, there have been 2 or 3 of them at this point. I mean, this has just been a thing for a while. And, Caratini's a guy that is not a bad player by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, he's not going to move the needle a lot. He's somebody that, as part of a platoon would be serviceable. But that's the guy that I just kind of can see it happening because recent history says they're going to sign a former Cubes catcher to fill a roster spot because that's just kind of what they do right now.
You just keep making it worse. Now you're going to make me want to drink. Steven, any other thoughts?
You started it.
Any other thoughts on potential moves that you see? I don't want to dive full into an off-season plan here, but any other names you have on your radar?
No. Honestly, I was thinking about this and, I may or may not have been having a DM discussion with resident White Sox Twitter X machine idiot Ken W.O. I don't know. I don't even know where to start with this
Surprised you
thing.
guys converse civilly through DMs.
We didn't say anything about it being civil. What people see on the timeline is just a brief snippet. That's probably a toned down PG version of what happens in the DMs because
Gotcha.
it's anything goes in there.
We had another discussion in the little Sox on Tap group about one Lucas Giolito potentially coming back. Don't mean
I
to
can see
alarm
it,
anybody,
actually.
but
I
yeah,
can see it.
I can too. I think he pitched himself into White Sox territory with his stints in LA and with Cleveland. And Ethan Katz is still here. I don't think he's going anywhere.
He's not. And here's one of the things I want to say about Ethan Katz. I know this has been a hot topic for a couple of weeks now, particularly with the addition of Brian Bannister joining the organization. Something that I am actually very keen on. And a little foreshadowing here, little spoiler alert. You may or may not be seeing some words about that on a little website known as ontapsportsnet.com in the coming days. Hint, hint. The two of them have a history working together from their days with the San Francisco Giants. So I think a lot of the talk about people saying that they wanted Ethan Katz to be gone. When Getz came in and was able to bring in Bannister and Josh Barfield, part of me feels like if Bannister didn't think that there was some sort of symmetry between the two of them and from a philosophical standpoint that they weren't on the same page, I could almost see Getz being out of the picture here. But given that background, given the time that they had together with the San Francisco Giants in that particular organization there, I think that they are quote unquote simpatico. And I get the sense that they feel as though they can work together. And it's going to be fascinating to see what happens with this. I've got a couple of different concepts brewing up here that I'm going to pound out on the keyboard here a little bit and kind of see. I went back on one of my recent flights out to the West Coast because everybody knows I'm West Coast Steve now.
You basically live out there.
I mean, listen, I get involved in all kinds of crazy hijinks. It happens, it's part of life. This is my cross to bear, so to speak. I actually reread the Brian Bannister chapter from the MVP Machine book that came out, and I want to say it was 2018. And the quotes still ring true, even though a lot of the concepts and some of the things that are talked about in the book in general are probably outdated at this point. The general basic concepts that Bannister talks about are things that still ring true today here. And that's something that, like I said, people, you're just going to have to wait for the full version at ontapsportsnet.com very soon.
I'm intrigued, personally, very intrigued. I have not read this, so I want to see how you wind up tying this all together. We can expect that to come soon, as you said, over at ontapsportsnet.com. Steve, I think this was the perfect segue because I wanted to start talking about some of these coaching changes, front office changes. Daryl Boston's gone, so you'll see somebody slot in there. I know we just hired a bullpen coach from the Angels today.
Jonathan has to be thrilled about that.
He is very thrilled. I think I saw him post on the old X machine that now we need to move on to hashtag fold the White Sox. Yeah, I mean, that was an interesting one. I don't know much about that guy. I don't know much about some of these other guys that are in there as much as, the name Barfield and Bannister have been tossed around here so far. But let's talk a little bit about Josh Barfield. I know he's done an interview, I believe, with Chuck Garfien. You've got the team that he was a farm director for in the World Series right now. That's got to be encouraging. I know that, people don't want to sit here and talk about silver linings with the Chicago White Sox. But we do have to respect the fact that Bannister seemed to have done a good job out there in San Francisco. Barfield seems to have done a really good job building a farm system in Arizona, track records are good. That's something that sort of makes me nervous, Steve. As a White Sox fan, a great track record coming to the south side of Chicago and wanting to work here, you're really excited on the Bannister stuff. I'm sort of more excited for the Josh Barfield stuff. How let down are we potentially going to be by these guys?
I'm going to mention a name to you that came from a very successful organization, had a lot of pedigree. Guy who came from my Barbs, Nick Hostetler, who, left the ATL to become the Sox amateur scouting director. And then he staked his professional reputation on the fucking Keebler elf. So there's that. Look, on the surface, Josh Barfield, and I listened to the discussion that he had with Charles Garfien on the corporate podcast. There were a couple of interesting little nuggets and tidbits thrown in there. I think it's particularly interesting when he said that, there were some things that just from taking a 10,000 foot view of the organization and where it's at from a scouting standpoint, he said that there were some things that he was actually very intrigued by. And to hear that coming from a guy that just left, a top 5 farm system in the sport, that's interesting to hear. And I think we all know that this White Sox farm system right now has a lot of work that needs to be done with it. From the scouting and from the player development side, there's a lot of things that need to be changed. And the hope is that Josh Barfield can bring some of the principles that were instilled in the Arizona organization here to the corner of 35th and Shields, and then down to Charlotte, Birmingham, Winston-Salem, and Kannapolis, and really get this thing churning and being more effective again. Time is going to tell with that. It's going to take a couple of years before we ultimately know if any of the changes that he is instituting are paying dividends. But it's, I guess, somewhat encouraging to think that they're bringing in a fresh set of eyes. That was one of the things that I know you and I were both very, frankly, pissed off about from the Chris Getz hire, because there wasn't an external search. It was just somebody inside. It was another insular hire. And these two hires, in particular with Barfield and with Bannister, these are guys that come from outside organizations and organizations that have had success in various different areas. So how they can go and integrate those philosophies from different organizations here to the Sox to try to turn this thing around as quickly as possible, it's going to be fascinating to see.
It's going to be a tough task, as you sort of mentioned here. It's going to be a really tough task. And I think, just because you see all of these guys arrive on scene this season, there's still a chance. I look at what's going on over on the north side right now. And if you don't follow that ball club, their front office is being absolutely decimated after a season in which they didn't even make the playoffs, but we're sort of on the up and up. I think they're up to 2 guys now, right now, interviewing for managerial, coaching, front office positions. And Breslow just was hired to go back to Boston as their president of baseball operations. So do you think this is a long-term stay for a guy like Barfield? Do you think it's a stepping stone? I know this is very deep into the weeds, but I sort of look at him after hearing the Chuck Garfien corporate podcast, some of the stuff that's been written about him. I'm wondering myself, and I'm sure others did as well, why not just hire him as your GM? Or is he not ready for that? Because he was in the same position as one Chris Getz, sort of a lateral move. From a career standpoint, why not entertain the idea of an outside hire like that? Why did it have to be Chris Getz and then bring in a guy who sounds better, at least talking to White Sox fans, than what we've had so far from Chris Getz. That's what sort of grinded my gears just a little bit, Steven. I don't know if you've got any reaction to that.
Well, Anthony, I mean, I think the simple answer to that would be it would take Josh Barfield at least a year to come in and look at all the infrastructure and all the systems that are in place. And Jerry Reiser just doesn't have that kind of time, as we know, that fucking asshole.
Because it's going to take Josh Barfield, like, just because he's not in the GM role. He should be ready to go day one. He's got nothing to learn. I understand there's less pressure, but that job is important. And one of the reasons that we've had, I don't even need to go down this road. If you're a White Sox fan, if you've been listening to this for so long, you know that some of the reasons that the development has been lacking has been on Chris Getz's employee review every single year during this almost entire rebuild. So here we are again. And that's just the question that I had to bring up, Steven, because it drove me nuts when I listened to that interview. And I'm like, this is far and away more put together, sounded like we had some semblance of a plan, some direction, versus what we've had out of Chris Getz. And I need to sit down with Pedro and have these discussions. And I wonder how many times they have sat down since the end of the season. In fact, I hope that they are watching every single World Series game together while sitting down and talking about how the White Sox are going to find a way to compete next year, because they've already set the bar at we are going to compete for a division title, if not more, which is a stupid goal. But I digress, Stephen. I thought Barfield was above and beyond any level of what I've heard come out of White Sox front office mouths in a long time. And the bar is very low, very, very low. And I don't know if we're going to hear much from Barfield. We didn't really hear much from Getz until he sort of arrived up as our GM and the rumblings were there. But it worries me because I think that there's a chance that a competitive team will swoop in and say, you're ready to come in and be a GM. And the lasting effects of, his tenure here will be minimal comparative to, like you said, it's going to take 2 or 3 years to implement and work that system out. So that is my caution there. I don't know on the Bannister side. He's been around the block a little bit more than a Barfield. And I don't know if he's angling for a GM position. He seems very comfortable in the pitching realm. But who knows? I'm a little worried about that.
I think the counterpoint to that is, you think about this from a corporate perspective and what you do in your day-to-day job in an IT role, what I do in my day-to-day job, that when you have someone and you have people working underneath you and you're in a management type role, one of the things that you ultimately look to do is to try to set up someone to either be your successor or to be able to branch outward. So hypothetically, if they put the right infrastructure in place, if Josh Barfield is the guy that is ultimately going to get this minor league and player development system on track for the first time in 20 plus years, that could be a good thing in some aspects, because, and even if then he does get plucked to go be a GM, if he has the right people working underneath them and kind of gives them the framework on what needs to happen going forward and instills in them the right thought process, you might be okay. That was a thing that you've seen with successful organizations all the time. Look at all the guys from the Houston Astros over the course of the last 8 years or so that have left, that were assistant GMs that have gone to be GMs with other organizations and have been successful. So that's something that can happen.
Are the White Sox like a breeding ground for success?
Right now, no. I'm obviously not right now, but
we want them to be.
You want them to be, sure. But in 2013, you go back 10 years ago, were the Houston Astros
No.
Okay. So by 2015, 2016, they were. That's when
Change has to start somewhere,
e-
Stephen.
e- exactly. Every
This might
new
be the most
beginning.
positive you've gotten from Stephen on the White Sox front office.
I mean, I don't know that I'm going to say that it's positivity. I think it's just trying to think about it rationally. And here on this holiest of days on the White Sox calendar, I want to be rational. I don't want to be angry today.
You
Today's
shouldn't
not the
have to
day.
be.
Today's not the day
There were some
for
people
anger.
there were some people a little bit angry about it. I've got a question for you in a little bit after we wrap up current White Sox talk. I think that's pretty much it on the coaching staff, front office stuff, unless you've got anything else to wrap it up.
No, I mean, I just you talked about wondering if Chris Getz has had the conversations with Pedro at this point. That begs the question: is Pedro done flushing and cleaning toilets at this point?
I mean, I'm pretty sure they took an Imodium and they're unable to shit all over themselves for the off season.
If there's
So
anybody that can find a way,
it's yeah. Well, we haven't heard the term "just flush it" in a while, so that's trending upwards for us. I think we're pretty good there for right now. This job has worked a bunch of days without having to hurt us. We're going to try and keep it that way, and that's the best part about being a White Sox fan is the off season where they can't lose. Oh boy. Well, here we are, and we've discussed some, 2023 going into 2024 topics. It is the holy day, as Stephen has mentioned. And I want to get into some '05 talk with you here, Steve. And the first question I have for you is I saw a couple of people today, they get very angry on the X machine. They get like hashtag mad online every year that we do this. And it's the same thing every October. It is a tradition. Almost like when you take the Christmas decorations out, it's, the start of October, you get your social media posts ready, and it all culminates on October 26th when the ground ball goes over the head of Jenks and the White Sox win the World Series.
can I just stop you there for 1 second? I
Sure.
don't think it's talked about enough about the fact that the White Sox actually won 2 games, 2 World Series games on October 26th, 2005. I have to correct people semi-regularly on this. People like to talk about October 25th as being Jeff Blum Day. No, Jeff Blum Day actually happened on October 26th because that game ended at like 1:20 a.m. because it went 14 innings.
It was back when
So,
baseball was cool and tough and you didn't start runners on second base in extra innings and there were no clocks.
I still remember that. I still remember staying up, watching that whole game, having to go to class the next day and everything. I remember waking up the next morning. My mom asked me, "Oh, did you stay up for the whole game?" Yeah. What the fuck? It's the World Series. You think I'm gonna fucking go to bed? You kidding me with this? What are we doing here? Come on.
I still remember that night vividly. We I was in high school freshman year and we had a Spanish video project, Steven. Do you remember video projects in high school? Did you have those?
Um,
Were those a thing for you? Or
I'm
was the
sure they.
camcorder not accessible back in your youth
I mean,
days?
we had them. I mean, I don't remember having to do that many video projects
In
in
high
my.
school, we had to do like these video projects. I'm sure people in my generation remember them. You're a little bit older than I am. But we had to like record like a 15-minute video in Spanish. And we had decided, it was due the next day. And we decided to wait till the last minute, which then culminated with all of us sitting on a couch, drinking Mountain Dew, and watching the White Sox game. Well, our parents were supposed to show up to whoever I was doing this video project with's house at like 10 p.m. because that's when we said it was going to be done in between like 7 and 10. We hadn't started yet. And that never got finished. There was actually an extension made by the high school teachers. Thank God. Nobody got flunked out of Spanish class in freshman year of high school year. But the fact of the matter is that game was that captivating. We didn't even leave until the end of all of that. I mean, I'm in a stranger's house watching this game go on and on and on. It was great. And I'll never forget that memory because that's the type of thing that happens when your team is en route to winning a World Series. It's random moments like that that make it special. Just like, as you said, I think you were shirtless running down a street in Northwest Indiana. These are things
Lansing, Illinois. It was Lansing, Illinois.
Lansing, Illinois. But these are things that you get to do. You get to have these random moments of joy and just pure randomness along these championship runs because everybody is captivated by it. I miss those days, man. But talking about these things brings back, the memories of what was probably the pinnacle of our fandom, could potentially be the pinnacle of our fandom in our lifetimes. Who knows? But Steve, I need some 05 stories from you here, man. Let's go.
All right. So you talk about, moments kind of looking back on things. So I remember the morning, of October 26th of 05, I had a couple of classes that day, and I had a group of friends that we would see each other, in the halls at the various buildings at Purdue Northwest. And, during that entire month, we would see each other in the hallways, in between classes and everything. And we would
How'd your alma mater do on Saturday? Don't mean to interrupt.
I don't fucking know. Listen, I only care about Purdue when it's convenient for me to troll. Okay, that's only when it matters. But
at least that's out there now.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it is what it is. My business took a big hit last March, so I'm asking that my privacy continue to be respected. Okay, Anthony. All right. Nevertheless,
continue.
We would see each other, in the hallways, and we would give each other signs. And then, especially like during the World Series, we'd see each other like the couple days, like going up to that, and we would just hold out the number 4. And then they win game 1, and then they win game 2. And then that following Monday, when we see each other in class, we're just walking down the hall. Every time we see each other, just throw up 2. Throw up 2. They win game 3. And then that day on October 26th, see each other. Every time you see each other in the hallway, just throw it up. Nobody says a word. It's just, that's it. Everybody knows what it means.
Was this like a superstition going through the hallways?
100%. 100%. There were about 4 or 5 of us. Every time we would go, nobody would say a word. We would just throw up the number. That was it. And like that whole month, that was the most insane month of my life. I've talked about this to a lot of different people. I mean, I had turned 21 that March. So, and that was the last season that I had actually played before I blew out my shoulder. And so, being able to legally go to bars and drink, culminating at a time when the Sox had the best season of my life and everyone's life to that point, it was just a collision of events. I mean, like I said, 21-year-old Steve was just on a different level. The things that
what a way to start your adulthood.
Oh my!
Everything
God.
from here has been a letdown.
Yeah, I mean, it has literally been all downhill since then. The shit that happens at tailgates now, people think it's crazy. Like you think about, what you, me, and Jonathan and Southside Ron did over the weekend. That is nothing compared to what happened and what was going on the month of October of 05.
I mean, are you comparing a bunch of near 30 and plus Steve aged men drinking beer in my garage to anything that would compare to 21-year-olds at a World Series? At least we're in the same breath. I mean, it's impressive for us.
I mean, no, it's not in the same breath is what I'm trying to tell you. I mean, it was just a whole different vibe. I mean, people think I'm
those were happy beers.
Oh God, were they? People think I'm an obnoxious asshole now. You have no idea what that was all about.
Were you living at home during this time?
I mean, I was, yeah, because I was in college at the time. So,
Yeah. How were the parents for this one? Were they tuned in?
They were. I remember this, like, one of the funniest moments of that whole year. Um, so the series in September against Cleveland, when everything was coming crashing down, me and two of my buddies, we went to the first game of that series when Travis Hafner hit the 2 home runs off Freddie Garcia, and Paulie hit the pop up on the cock shot right down the middle from Bob Wickman in the 9th inning when they had a chance to win it. And that was the only night that whole time when they were spiraling in September that I thought they were going to blow it. Traffic was so bad getting home that night. We were literally stopped on the Bishop Ford, and there were all these cones set up on the highway on 94. And I remember getting out and literally kicking over a fucking cone because I was so pissed off that day. And I remember getting home and my mom just like shaking her head, and I just looked at her. I go, they're going to fucking blow it. And I walked downstairs to my bedroom, fucking slammed the door, and that was it. And then the next day when Creedy hit the walk-off homer against David Risky, I'm watching the game on the couch in the living room in the basement, and it's 10:30 at night. Everybody's fucking sleeping. My younger sister is in high school at the time and everything. And then Creedy hits the fucking homer, and I go fucking bullshit. I go, you can't put that fucking shit on the board. Wake everybody up in the fucking house. Everybody's like, what the fuck is going on here? I go, Creedy just hit the fucking bomb. They fucking won the game. All right, we're back on track, baby. Okay. And then they lose the next couple of games after that, but then they right the ship. And it just that whole month. I mean, Game 1 against Boston might have been one of the most drunk experiences I've ever had at a baseball game. And it was funny because I got the tickets the day before. I was at the gym. This is an absolutely true story. I was at the gym.
No exaggerations.
Two days before this game, okay? And I'm talking to a guy that was a little league coach of mine when I was a fucking kid. And he was asking me if I had tickets to the game, and I'm like, no, I'm still looking. He goes, well, me and my girlfriend, we haven't decided if we're going to go or not. If we don't go, we'll just give you the tickets. Just go to the gift shop and get me a White Sox polo shirt. And I'm like, okay, just
Easy.
Let me know. So he texts me the next day. He's like, yeah, we're not going to take the tickets. I'm like, okay, I will come and pick them up right now. Give me your address. So I go fucking pick them up, and me and my one buddy, we get so drunk before this fucking game even starts. I mean, I still to this day have the Coors Light aluminum cooler box that they had at the time. It is in my fucking garage, or in my fucking closet behind me right there, with a bunch of other Sox memorabilia. I have never thrown that thing out in my life. I mean, that was just one of the most insane experiences. And I remember when Boston announced Matt Clement was starting Game 1, I'm like, this fucking series is over. They're going to bomb the shit out of that motherfucker because they always destroyed him every time they saw him. I go, when they made that announcement, when they went Matt Clement Game 1, I said, that series is fucking done. Now we fucking roll.
And that series was great, too. Had some very pinnacle moments. I mean, does anything beat the Jam?
Hocus Pocus, says Hernandez.
That was just such an epic moment right there. And I feel like for some odd reason, just thinking back, there were times during that year where I said that, this team's special, like just watching them play. But right there, you sort of got this feeling. How can anybody beat these guys? I mean, what a momentum builder. And maybe it's just because I've got a little bias here, but I watch a lot of playoff baseball. There's been moments in series, or you can watch these teams. We'll talk a little bit about the current playoffs. There's moments where you just know, like, a team is about to get on a roll, or has it. This team has it, something that we want our teams to have. Right there was sort of the it moment, because everything that preceded it went their way. It was the ultimate boost in confidence. It was the ultimate boost in morale. It had everything there, because if that goes a different way, you have no idea what's going to spiral out. I'm seeing a lot of tweets, posts on X, whatever you want to call it today, about, oh, the Diamondbacks might not even be in the World Series if Seiya Suzuki doesn't drop that ball and completely miss it in that game against your Bars. Because you can make an argument. You can make an argument that Arizona might not be there if that routine fly ball is caught. Imagine if that went just a little bit different. And that is just things you dream of as a baseball fan, as a baseball player, taking place right there. And it was like the first of many historic moments. But I sort of put that as one of the moments where it culminates and you say, this team is going to the World Series and most likely winning it. I don't know about you. If there's another moment in this this entire playoff run that you thought was the solidifying moment, let me know. I think there's plenty of them available for the picking.
Okay. So for me, they lose game 1 to Anaheim. Garrett Anderson hits the home run off Contreras in the first inning, and you have the botched double play ball by Iguchi where he throws the ball into the stands. So that was the only loss they had that entire playoff run. I had tickets for game 2, the AJ game, and I remember me and my buddy driving up to the park that night, and there wasn't a lot said. I mean, there was a lot of nervous energy that night. And I remember saying to him, I go, you got to win tonight. You lose this game, they're getting swept, because they had a history at that point of going out to the West Coast in Los Angeles of Anaheim of Los Angeles of Anaheim of Orange County of California of the Pacific time zone and really struggling. So that game was of tremendous importance. Had they lost that one, I really feel like that would have been it. And being at that game, when that whole thing went down, when AJ swings and misses, I remember turning around. Everybody said, I remember turning around, kicking my fucking seat, going, God fucking damn it. And then all of a sudden I turn back around and he's like standing at first base and everyone's like confused about what is going on. And then they give him first base and Mike Scioscia has his little hissy fit out there. Pablo Ozuna pinch runs, steal second. Joe Crede, piss rod off the fucking wall. Place just goes absolutely fucking bananas. And I remember walking back to my car after that, going through the parking lot, and one of the camera crews from one of the Chicago news networks is in the parking lot. I remember grabbing the fucking camera and screaming into it while walking through the parking lot. At that moment, I'm like, they're not going to be stopped. It doesn't matter at this point. Whoever wins the fucking National League pennant, you're a fucking footmark or a footnote at this point. That's what you are. Like that was the moment. Walking out of the park that night after game 2, I'm like, this shit is fucking done. It's fait accompli. There's going to be a fucking parade.
Do you think that if you replay that Angels series, this is just a hypothetical question, do you replay that series 100 times? Do you think, just percentage-wise, because I thought those two teams were pretty evenly matched, at least coming in. I mean, there was some power on that Angel squad. Do you think you can replicate what took place in, 2 through 5 there? How many times over can you do that?
You can't. And that's what made it that much more historic. I was twittering about this earlier about how I watched the DVD and Coop's famous line in that DVD where it says, it did cross my mind, it wouldn't stink to get the 4th. I mean, there was a reason why that hadn't been done in like 80 years. I mean, it was like what the 1924, 1925 Yankees were the last team that had 4 consecutive complete games in the postseason. Like we're not. That is something you will never see that again.
You won the lottery as a baseball fan,
right? And
right there.
But that's just another aspect of what made that whole thing so special, because you have those 4 straight complete games, something that hadn't been done in over 8 decades. And there's just so many different little things that you can point out about that whole season and the culmination of it and the way that it ended and all these little interesting coincidences. Like the fact of the matter is that team, people don't talk about this enough. That team had 5 8-game winning streaks that year, including 16 out of their final 17 to win the fucking World Series.
Man, what does that feel like?
That's insanity.
What does that feel like? I feel so far removed from this, and we are 18 years, 18 long years,
old enough to buy a Zin.
Yes, it's old enough to buy a Zin now. But you know the tweet. This is what you want? Is this what you want? That is what I want from the Chicago White Sox. I don't know about you. That's what I want. I don't care what the roster looks like, all that other stuff. I don't care who the coach is. I don't care if it's Pedro Grifol. I don't care who it is. Do that, and it won't matter because winning cures everything.
I mean, that's what it all comes down to. I mean, you talk all the time that you want to see happy Steve. That's what I want too, because again, that was the happiest month of my life. I don't care what anybody says. That might say a lot about me as an individual. I don't give a fuck. I was young. I didn't have a fucking care of the world. The one fucking sports team that I truly care about did something that I wanted them to do my entire fucking life. That was the best month of my life. Nothing even comes close to that. And I want that. I said this. If that shit would have happened in 2021,
that is what you want. Hashtag confirmed.
Hashtag confirmed. Like if that shit would have happened with Sleepy McDrunkface, I would have been fucking ecstatic. Fucking ecstatic.
I thought we were gonna get there. I really did. I don't mean to, bring up bad times in the midst of such a great conversation about, the just amazing run and the best time in Steven's life. And I think most White Sox fans, at least in the sports fandom portion of the world, I thought we were going to get there. That's what we were promised. All the talk, we've dissected this. We've investigated every little angle of it on post-game shows, on Sunday fun days and long form shows about where this stuff goes wrong, and they'll live it every day. I just, at this moment, I think the feeling of the hopelessness that we look forward into 2024 and 25, it does make you appreciate it as a White Sox fan to sit here and have this conversation about 2005. I mean, we were sitting just a few feet away from where I'm sitting right now on Saturday. Well, it was probably Sunday morning at that point in time of this week. And I believe Don't Stop Believin' came on. And you, Jonathan, and I are sitting here and we're singing along. And I'm sure the same thought is crossing all of our minds. Johnny and I are thinking about Tony Soprano at the end of The Sopranos. And you were thinking about the 2005 White Sox.
I mean, that's confirmed. I mean, anytime that song comes on, that's just what immediately pops into my mind. That song is just always going to be synonymous with that season and with that time of my life. If I make it to 52 years old and I hear that song on October 26th of 2036, That's immediately where my mind is going to go. That's just what's going to happen. And that's how it's going to be until the end of time.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that still permeates White Sox culture with 2005, and that's why I was semi shocked with some of the people on the timeline that just don't like to see the 2005 highlights
I've
that
never
come out
understood,
every year.
I've never understood that either. I've never understood the people that say, "Oh, get over it," quit living in the past. Like, most people celebrate a birthday every year. I mean, and that's kind of something that,
Go to court here, Steve. Let everybody know why it's okay to do this every year.
it's okay, because it's okay to look back fondly on a moment in time in your life that made you happy. It's okay. In fact, it's
This
a
is going to make
good
me smile. Here we go.
fucking thing. It's a good thing. There's a lot of things that go on in your life on a day-to-day basis that piss you off, that fucking irritate you. You got a boss, you got a wife, you got whatever, you got fucking kids if you own a human, all that bullshit. All these little things that can fucking piss you off. But it's okay to go back to a moment in time that made you really fucking happy. And that's why every year on this date, it doesn't matter. It's always going to be a good day for me, no matter what happens, because I go back in time to when I was 21 years old, a drunken asshole, obnoxious as fuck. But I was
Not
on
much has
top of
changed.
I mean, I'm more bitter now,
Bitter
probably,
Steve. Yeah.
but at that moment in time, the one sports team that I cared about did the thing that I had always wanted them to do. And it fucking made me so unbelievably happy. Why people don't want to remember that and look back fondly on that, I will never understand it.
Well, I think you've said your piece on it. I agree with it. I think that just my addition to this would be the Bulls fans do the same thing with all of their rings. They got a lot more of them.
There's one fan base that's even worse than the Sox when it comes to this shit.
Ooh, it's not the Blackhawks, is it?
It's definitely not the Blackhawks.
It's not the Cubs either.
It's definitely not the Cubes.
I know which fan base you're talking about. It's the Chicago Bears.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened a lot longer
Yeah, 20 years
ago than
earlier.
2005. Yes.
Yeah. I was literally still in diapers when that fucking shit happened. But
I wasn't even on this earth.
yeah. But they still want to talk about that. Like that's what's always funny to me is those Cube fans that like say, "Oh, Sox fans living in the past," yet they go and they celebrate the fucking 85 Bears all the fucking time.
Yeah.
Pick
It's
a
true. It
fucking lane.
happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they'll ever see another Super Bowl again. We'll see
I
if that happens.
mean, they might have solved the QB1 dilemma. So
This is
things
not
actually
Bears on
might
Tap. The people don't.
things might be looking up for them a little bit. Who knows?
Big Tyson Bagent guy over here.
That's
NWIC.
QB1, baby. QB1.
Steve, we've got just a little bit of time left here, and then we're gonna ride on out into the darkness because there's no longer sunsets that happen around 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night anymore. It's dark. Uh, we've got a World Series coming up, and I'm just curious. Any thoughts on this World Series matchup? I love it. I love the fact that we've got the Arizona Diamondbacks back in. Shout out to our video editor here at On Tap Sportsnet, Mr. Brian Lefevre. He does a great job. Not only does he do the video edits for this show, he does them for pretty much every show here at On Tap Sportsnet. Does the Cubs, he does Bulls, Hawks, everything. And he's a huge Diamondbacks guy. I messaged him before the start of the playoffs. I said, "Hey, Brian, sell me on your Diamondbacks. Why should I get on board?" And I love the Diamondbacks as an NL team. I love the story. I love when they came in and went to the World Series, and just had that run. Luis Gonzalez, man, it was just one of my favorite hitters. And I wanted Brian to sell me on the team. I said, "Why are they going to go to the World Series? Like, get me on this bandwagon." Because I've seen some people flip flop bandwagons faster than anything else in White Sox Twitter, in the White Sox Twitterverse. I wanted to solidify my team that I was going into this playoffs with, and Brian told me the Diamondbacks are going nowhere. I went to the bar with Jonathan and our good guy Southside Ron. We were talking about this stuff. I said Diamondbacks. Johnny told me they didn't have enough power to get there. Brian said don't root for them, and it's worked this far. It's worked this far. And I'm just curious, who do you have in this series?
I do have Texas winning the series. To your point, Arizona is a really fascinating story to think about it as a pennant winner. 84 wins in the regular season. If you look at this team, middle of the pack offensively in just about every category. Home runs, on base percentage. I mean, the one thing that they do at the top of the league, they were second in the league in stolen bases. Very good base running team. So that's one thing they do really well. They play good defense, bottom tier pitching. So it's kind of just been one of those things where they have gotten hot at the right time and rode it out to winning a pennant, which
they got a little bit of a chip on their shoulder.
They do. And I talked about this on Twitter.com. This is a perfect example. You have a number 5 seed versus a number 6 seed. Get into the playoffs and anything can happen. They are a poster child for this. I've said for a number of years, the regular season, the 162 games, determines who the best teams are. The playoffs determines who gets the World Series trophy. It's a coin flip on whether or not they are one and the same.
Yeah, any thoughts on the playoff structure, Steven? We've
I hate
had
it.
so many different takes
I hate
that
it.
have come from this particular playoff, in particular with the Diamondbacks and Rangers making it to the World Series. I know that that's a rather hot topic. You say you hate it. I'm not really entirely a fan of it. I just don't know what I would change. What about you?
I mean, the fact of the matter is this. Look, if you want the best teams to ultimately be vying for the World Series and to be ultimately vying for the Praise Manfred Trophy, the piece of metal.
I thought Johnny won the Praise Manfred Trophy.
Yeah. Basically, what you have to do is you have to go back to 4 divisions, 2 division winners. 4 teams make the playoffs. That's it. That's the most equitable system because that's what rewards the 162 game grind. Once you start adding in all these wild cards, you devalue that 162 game season because you get into these situations with these short series, with these best of 3s, these best of 5s, and it just lends itself to upsets happening. I mean, because you think about...
I think I would be okay if they just went back to division series. What was it? 1 wild card team division series, but make it 7 games.
I mean,
if you're going to keep that many teams in there, 4 in each league.
Yeah. I mean, we're never going to do that. We're never going to decrease the number of playoff teams that happens. My greatest fear and what's going to happen is when expansion inevitably happens, and we know it's going to happen, we know they're going to add 2 more teams. So we're going to have 8 divisions of 4. That's going to be a thing. And then, you're going to have 16 teams making the playoffs.
It's going to be March Madness baseball stuff.
It is like it's an inevitability. We know it's going to happen. This format that
Pure
they have,
chaos, though.
yeah, but I just don't like it. I think at the end of the day, I think I'm a traditionalist in the sense that your season is 162 games. It is by far the longest regular season of any of the 4 North American sports. You are devaluing it by adding more teams into this postseason structure when a short series lends itself to bad things happening. I mean, if you have a stretch in June, you're 20 games over 500 and you lose 3 out of 5, yeah, it's annoying. You get pissed off. You get the schlubs calling into sports talk radio. But at the end of the day, is it that big of a deal? No. But then it happens in October and everyone loses their minds.
Last question I have for you before we get out of here. Should Christopher Russo retire?
Yes. He's a bitch. Fuck him. He made a bet. He put it out there. He put his name on it. His name and his face were on it. You need to honor it. None of this bullshit. And I've seen some of Torey Lovullo's commentary about it here. And it's weak. You can't put something out there as long as you've been doing this, making a name for yourself, making an ass out of yourself. You put something like that out there, be a fucking man. Own it.
Are you okay with him doing his punishment thing that he's trying to get away with?
What exactly is it? I haven't seen the full details.
So, I guess he went on Howard Stern, and Mr. Stern told him that he at least needs to do something to own up to this. So if he just dressed up in a bikini and wore a sign around his neck that said, "I'm a douche," and walked up and down the streets of New York, everybody would forget about it and at least say that he was a man. I guess Christopher Russo replied to that by saying, "I don't like the word douche. Let me use idiot instead." I'm not sure if that really gets the same full effect out there. I don't know. This is the Howard Stern show. I don't listen to it. I just heard the clip that was posted to X. What was that? Yesterday, the day before, and I thought to myself, no, I think he should retire. I think he should still retire. At least for a year. Like, if you want to come back and unretire, you can unretire, but you need to retire.
I think at the end of the day, what this just shows is that Italians are not men of their word.
See, we don't claim him.
Oh, I don't think that's how this works, Anthony.
I don't think that's in your jurisdiction. You're out of jurisdiction.
I'm just saying.
We all know how your feelings are, but you did enjoy some Italian meat and cheese and all that good stuff on Saturday night.
I was fucking hungry. Okay, listen. By the time
thereafter.
Listen, by the time that got brought out, I was like, what, 8 or 9 beers deep already? What am I supposed to do in that situation?
I wouldn't count that 8 or 9 beers. I think that was more like maybe 2 tree and 1 cracked one all over my garage floor, but I digress.
I think it was more than a couple 2 tree.
You went through a couple real quick. Steven, that's all the time we have for today. It was wonderful getting back on these airwaves and chatting some White Sox baseball. Looking forward to your article that's coming out on some Brian Bannister stuff. Steven, why don't you let everybody know where they can find that and find you?
Well, they can find it on a glorious website, www.ontapsportsnet.com. You can find me on the Twitter X Machine at NWI_Steve. Lots of White Sox hijinks, couple 2 tree, wrestling gifs and videos posted in there every once in a while. And, listen, we're getting into Seinfeld live tweeting season, which, Anthony, I know. I'll
be watching for it.
This is one of your favorite times of year. So
I'll be watching for it.
Yeah.
I will be waiting. I will be waiting. Hey, it's the off season. We're getting close to one of your other favorite holidays and Festivus and airing grievances, and we'll be along for that here on these airwaves. We've got some other White Sox content coming your way. Follow the show at Sox On Tap. Follow myself at Tony On Tap. And make sure you subscribe to the YouTube. That's youtube.com/OnTapSportsNet. We're nearing that 1,000 follower mark over there. So please help us out if you just tuned in. Thank you to everybody who tuned into the show. Happy 18th anniversary of the White Sox winning the World Series back in 2005. We'll be back soon with more White Sox content here on Sox on Tap. White Sox forever.
White Sox 4.